Ko Esther Whitehead toko ingoa. Welcome this morning. I'm just going to open us with a karakia. Whakatakateho ki te uru, whakatakateho ki te tonga, kia mā kina kina ki utu, kia mā taratara ki tai, e hea ki nei I te kura, he tio, he huka, he hohu, ki he moriora. Welcome, welcome.
Thank you, Esther. Welcome, everybody. I'm just going to do us a little bit of housekeeping before we jump into the webinar, and we've still got people flooding into the waiting room as we are all arriving. So kia ora, ko Michelle Gallagher toko ingoa. Lovely to meet you. I am Michelle. I work here at the Centre for Social Impact, supporting our programs and talks and all sorts of free resources to help you amazing folks out in community. So to get started, these talks are proudly supported by Foundation North, and we're keen to take a little poll. So let me see if I can multitask while we're chatting. Has this beautiful poll popped up on your screen, and can you vote yes and no? Oh yeah, I can see some concentrating faces. There. Wonderful. Thanks, everybody. Really appreciate that. So yeah, these Te Puaha talks are free. We love that you're coming along. We've got all sorts in our website, back from grant writing, evaluation, all sorts. So I'll share some links out later. But for today, we're here with Esther, talking all things climate strategy. So back to you, Esther.
Thank you. Well, let's make a start. So we've welcomed you with karakia. Sorry for those of you who are just joining who have missed that, but we like to settle in and connect. And today we're going to be talking about climate action and the impact that you have as small not-for-profits. So a little bit of background on myself. So ko Esther Whitehead toko ingoa. I'm an associate with the Centre for Social Impact, where Michelle is joining us from today. I'm actually based down in Tahuna, Queenstown, so we're at the far ends of the country. My work has spanned two different sectors, really. One is the education sector and one is the environmental sector. My original background is in freshwater ecology, and I have done a lot of work in education with neurodiversity and inclusion. So the lens that I always look through is both social impact and environmental impact. And I am not a carbon accountant, but I have facilitation expertise. So today what we're talking about will include emissions, but if you're here to really delve deep into the emissions spectrum and everything carbon accounting, then this is very kind of high level approach rather than a deep dive into that. So we know from those of you who have joined us from the database that we have quite a mix actually of people joining us today. So we have some ecological groups, we have some sports groups, we have housing trusts, so a real range of different guests. So thank you for your time. We really appreciate you giving your time up. I will share my PowerPoint and we will dive in. So I somehow have got us on, there we go. So we've got a lovely title here, No Sustainability Team, No Problem. It kind of is slightly tongue-in-cheek, but it is a challenge for us, right? We have this increasing pressure to think beyond our core kaupapa. We might be a sports group, but we might be thinking about how we can actually be reducing our impacts, our harmful impacts. And building a climate strategy is as easy as you want it to be or as hard as you want it to be. And so today we're going to start with the basics in terms of answering these 4 questions. So firstly, why does climate matter to us? I think you're best placed to answer these questions yourself rather than me prompting answers. What impacts do we have, good or bad? What will we do? And how will we know we're making progress? So essentially, our goal today is to get you to kind of think about emissions as one aspect, about Te Taio and the environment as another aspect, and about social equity. And I just want to draw our attention to the fact that I work in the climate space. So I lead the funders' commitment for climate action, where I work with large funders to think about their whole entity and how their impact in philanthropy is good in the grant making space, but beyond that, what are their investments doing and what are their financed emissions doing? So there's an awful lot involved, but when we're thinking about how can we make progress as a small not-for-profit, we need to, I think, keep it quite simple. So a climate strategy doesn't need to be perfect. And in recent years, the pressure to come up with a climate action plan which is marketable and downloadable from our website, I think tends to make us more focused on the extrinsic value of it rather than our intrinsic goals. Ultimately, we want to be able to know how we're reducing harmful impacts. We want to be able to make informed decisions, and we want to aim to also create positive impact to the environment and to our people. So let's just take a moment to think about what climate change is and how it actually affects us. These kind of prompts here, honestly, you could have a session on each of these and a really deep dive into each of these. But climate change, we know, is not just an environmental issue. And I suspect that everybody on this call already knows that. They don't need any convincing. Sometimes politicians might need convincing that the environment is more than just the physical world around us. We can see that climate is changing our communities, is changing the funding dynamic because we are seeing funding shifting. Government funding, DIA funding is changing as more climate pressure is reaching our communities. So essentially what we're seeing is that more money is needed, more capital investment is needed in our communities. And with that is a pressure for those to fund it. We also recognise a huge shift in insurances, both in what is insurable and also the cost of insurance. We might be seeing changes in our volunteers. We're certainly seeing changes in our costs. And there are also things like our reputation. Organisational resilience is another dependent. And I think for you, rather than me just listing these off, again, it's worthwhile you kind of connecting with a colleague when you have this downloadable PowerPoint that Michelle will share afterwards to kind of think about which aspects of these are most affecting you. So this goes without saying, but we know that small actions thousands of times do make collective impact. And so one that I quite like is just, one single-use coffee cup. It's only one cup. It's not going to make a difference, said 8 billion people. And, it does make a difference. So those small actions are not too small, and you can make those actions with pride, and you can also measure them. So let's have a bit of a dive in to what are our impacts then. I suggest that you have a pen and paper for this. But essentially, I have focused this particular session on the 3 Bs. So you can write these 3 Bs down. They might not make sense to you yet. Burn, buy, and beyond. Now, you are all different, but probably there are some commonalities that I'm going to assume. I'm going to assume that you're a relatively small operational not-for-profit that is providing a service rather than manufacturing goods. So where do your emissions sit? It's key information to everybody that most of our emissions are heating and cooling space. So that's running the place. And moving things or people around. So essentially, how we heat the space, cool the space, and how we move people around are 2 of our biggest emissions. What we buy or invest in is our supply chain and what you throw away. So this is kind of where our emissions sit. So again, I want you to actively think about what your premises are like. Are you working from home? Are you working from an office? How do people move around? Is that important in your particular not-for-profit? Are lots of people toing and froing from a workplace, or is it more about your customer base and those that you serve? So this lovely graphic here is, those of you who actually do carbon accounting and have it verified might be familiar with this. But this is looking at accounting and reporting standards. And I am just going to give us a kind of quick overview of it to help us navigate what all of this means. So if we think about what we burn, what we buy, and beyond, what we burn is here, this one. So this is what I was saying about our company facilities and our vehicles. And then we have things that are upstream of us. This is our whole supply chain. So if you think about how you heat your space, have you got heat pumps? You're purchasing electricity, which is an indirect emission. I'm just going to get technical for a minute. Your eyes might glaze over. So when you purchase electricity, this process, if it has used fossil fuels, which about 11 to 15% of our production of electricity is non-renewable, is burning coal, then it's already created emissions at this stage. And then you use your electricity within your home or your office, and you are burning at this stage as well. So all I want you to think about here is that this is where we see what we can directly change. And upstream of us is how everything that we purchase gets to us, how that's manufactured and how it's supplied. Downstream of us is everything that, all activities that are associated with what we do. So it might be that we have some leased assets, and what happens to these is a downstream or indirect scope 3. So this is super technical, but essentially, why is it important? Well, everything we do creates emissions. The one that we talk about the most is carbon dioxide. And in our atmosphere, we have over 400 parts per million, which doesn't sound like much. But when we breached the 400 parts per million of carbon dioxide in our atmosphere, our weather patterns started to change. And so these are all heat trapping gases. And this is the one that we refer to most. So emissions, the ones that are most important are here, but it depends on what space you work in. Like if you work in Kai sovereignty or food and ag, then nitrous oxide might be important to you. This is what we find in synthetic fertilizers. So I'll move on from this slide. The thing to take away is that we have control directly over our scope 1s, and we can reduce at this stage. And we can reduce without spending a lot of money. Okay. So this is the burn that I was referring to. This is our electricity, our gas, our fuel, our vehicles, and our equipment. So essentially, I want you to be able to identify your biggest energy uses. So look at your bills. So what I want you to do in the chat, just as an exercise to get you kind of thinking, is I want you to put in the chat the company that you buy your energy from. Because I'm interested to know if you know the company that you buy your energy from. So it might be Meridian or Mercury. It might be any of those Jen Taylors. I can't see the chat, but that's okay. Michelle,
if you click on the chat, it will pop out, but I'm happy to read a couple. So we've got Mercury, Meridian, Pulse, PowerShop, Genesis.
Okay, wonderful. So there's a whole other workshop involved in that. And the key thing to take away for this workshop is you need to look at your bill in order to know how much energy you're using. So I'm just going to throw some proxy numbers out there that are well known. A typical household in New Zealand, and it's going to vary dependent on where you live, uses about 10,000 kilowatt hours of energy per annum, per year. So if you know what you're using and it states it on your bill, you will be able to, without changing things to carbon emissions and actually using a calculator, you'll be able to just see how many kilowatt hours you use. And if you can reduce that number, you know you've reduced your emissions. So that's where I want you to kind of focus. The thing that I said about a whole different workshop is you can check how environmentally friendly your retailer is. I can share that link. I don't think I've actually put that link in there, but we can share it afterwards. By looking at how many their renewables and also their emissions targets themselves. So that's obviously a procurement kind of action. At this stage, I'm simply suggesting that you look at what you can control in terms of what you're burning, okay? So that's looking at your bill and reducing that kilowatt hour. In order to identify your biggest energy uses, you first have to look at where they are. So are you using electricity? Are you heating with gas, etc.? So they're the things that you want to identify. If you're looking at your vehicles, you need to be able to look at your odometer readings so that you can see how many kilometers are being used. If you do it just on the price of fuel, obviously it's going to be variable with price. So you need to be looking at the unit of measurement, which is mileage or kilometers. This next one is around identifying reducing waste. And I write seen and unseen because waste we often think of as physical waste, like in our bins. And that's really important. That is something that I want you to do. I want you to do bin waste audits. They're a lot of fun. They're what you can see, but the unseen is the wastage in your heating and loss of heat in your building. So that's going to look at what you can do to insulate and to keep the heat in your buildings. And ultimately, the goal is to electrify where practical. And Rewiring Aotearoa does a lot of work on this. Their whole goal has been to switch out every single machine in New Zealand to an electric one. So if you mow your lawn with fossil fuels, with petrol, you would switch it to electric. And it's about electrifying whenever you can. So if you have the opportunity when something breaks down to then replace it, it's about making that switch. Essentially, it's choosing lower carbon options. So in terms of what we buy, this is our supply chain. So this is where your energy retailer comes into play. So the biggest relevant categories are these. And they might include things like business travel. They might include upstream transportation and distribution. I'm not going to spend too long on this because for most of you, you probably don't buy too many services or goods, but you may. Probably the most relevant one is the energy that you're purchasing, and it might be also capital goods, which are things for long-term use for your business. So that might be long-term equipment. Yeah. Okay, so in terms of what you buy, a lot of emissions are hiding in the things that you buy. So identifying what they are is important. I've just referred to some of these. And then if we're looking at reducing your impact, it's what can we buy less of, or can we influence our partners? So who are you partnering with? It might be worth asking that question just as a point of interest. Have any of you got key partners that you work with that would affect the supply chain, things that you're buying? Nothing coming through? No. Okay, I thought as much. That's good for me to know. Okay. So key things that you can do is anything that you do buy, you can obviously make a switch to buying locally or looking at the efficiency of those things that you buy. So I'm not going to spend too long on this because I'm not sure how relevant it is. So the beyond aspect is everything that's downstream in that picture that I showed you. And for not-for-profit organisations, as I've mentioned, the emissions aren't really the biggest kind of material emissions aren't necessarily in your operations, because you might run a pretty small operation. They're probably associated with what happens beyond what you do. So that's, I keep referring to sports. I think it's something that we can all picture. If you're a sports club, then the biggest emissions are probably just people coming to play sports using their transport to get there, to and fro. So relevant beyond categories are these ones here, scope 3, indirect, and they might be transporting or distributing the things that you create, and the use of sold products, end of life stuff. So a good example, which I'll give you in a moment, might be a partnership arrangement that you have. So in this example, if you are a community housing trust, you might be working with your council and developers to develop affordable housing. Your actual operations is just your office and your staff. And so for you, those emissions are probably quite small. They're not that material. But the downstream emissions are largely about how the homes that you are associated with are used and what happens to them over a lifetime. So, for example, the resident energy use, the maintenance and repairs, etc., how the house is used are these downstream things. So in terms of what we can think about with our partners is how do we actually influence them and work with them to ask them how they will create homes that perform over the lifetime, not just how much they emit to build. Any questions there, Michelle? You look like you're thinking and writing. All good?
Only for myself, but nothing coming in the chat yet. Thanks.
Okay. So this can be somewhat overwhelming, and this session is about taking the overwhelm away, because when we look at when we look at these diagrams, they're quite intense. And as I say, carbon accounting is very academic, which is why we use verifiers such as Toy2 and ECOS. So you don't have to know all of this stuff. You're just going to think about these things. And I think hopefully I've made that super clear in terms of what you can control. It will have an impact and you will be able to reduce it. So we've just talked about emissions, but we don't want just a carbon tunnel. What I see more often than not is organisations big and small going down the route of focusing on their operational emissions, learning how to calculate it, spending a tremendous amount of time on it, but getting too caught up in just carbon emissions. And there's other things that you can do. So I want you to consider what other impacts that you think you may have, good or bad. Think beyond emissions. So how are we impacting our environment? Is there anything with nature directly that we are impacting? Biodiversity, water, land, or resources? I can't answer that for you, but have a little think. And then in terms of the equity lens, again, we have numerous workshops on this that we'll share the link with you following. Social justice is climate justice. What does that mean? It means that we are living through a period of transition. We are trying globally to change the way that we live from our dependence on fossil fuels to looking at clean energy and to working in a totally different way. And obviously, for that to be just, we have to not leave people behind. So it's about identifying who benefits, who carries costs, and who is most vulnerable. And when we can identify those people, we can start to look at ways of acting in an equitable manner. And again, you're only going to have so much capacity, probably in your core kaupapa, what you do, to be able to look at things like inclusion and accessibility and supporting the people you do in the way that you can. So a quick activity then. Can you think about, before you write it in the chat, can you think about your biggest impact based on what we've discussed today? When you're certain or feel relatively certain what that is, pop it in the chat. I also want you to think about which one or two areas are likely to be most material for your organisation. So I'm going to give you just another scenario here. If I've got a team of 4 people and we're working in an office and our operations are tiny, honestly, that's just not material. It doesn't mean you can't do it. You can still go through your energy bills and everything. But there might be something else where you can drive a bigger impact, and you might have to think creatively about this, and there's more in this following. It might be that each of you has got a KiwiSaver account and your portfolios might be doing harm. So it might be that you can have a discussion as a team about what's happening within your own investment portfolios, not at a personal level, but which services you're procuring, so who you're with, whether you're with Pathfinder, Simplicity, Craig's, etc. And it might be that you can make shifts in other areas that are more material. Usually, if you follow the money spent, you can identify what is most material. That's just one idea, by the way. There are numerous. So, in the chat, can you explain some of the biggest impacts that you're seeing? And the most material part of your organisation?
I've already got a few people sharing about their travel, either with air or to meetings, and a few looking around waste mitigation.
Okay. Great. So that's where you're going to start. I do like to say that when we do something, it is a verb. And it's not an English lesson, but I think sometimes when we start writing our goals and then turning them into strategies and plans, they don't always end up in the doing space. So what I would like you to do is create some sentence starters based on these. And you're going to identify, you've already started to look at this, our biggest impact is, and you're going to choose one with some certainty. It might not be the right one, but it's going to be good enough today. We're already doing whatever you're already doing. We could improve by, next step, one key action for the next 6 months, who will do it and who will help them to do it or help you to do it. So I suggest that you actually do this on a piece of paper or directly into a Word doc or however is convenient for you. Again, we'll share this with you. If you were to do this and then put it into a spreadsheet, this is good enough for a strategy or a plan. It's your starting point. So Michelle, sorry that I'm leaning on you to refer back to me. It's just that because the way I'm sharing my own screen to myself means that I'm not accessing the chat. Anything coming through?
Yeah, quite a lot of stuff. Somebody's saying their biggest impact is encouraging participants to use cleaner forms of transport. Some are looking at climate-friendly actions, e.g. marakai or environmental restoration.
Yep.
Cool. Yeah, there's some equity conversations about burdens on volunteers. So there for that. Yeah, still lots of reflection around travel use and stationery or materials that they're purchasing, like computers.
Okay. So once you can identify this, if your biggest impact is those that travel to and from, that is a really challenging space because what you're referring to there is behaviour change. So you and the rest of the world is trying to get people out of cars and into moving in different ways. And yeah, that is very challenging. So obviously there's a range of ideas. Some of you might have them. Feel free to put them in the chat. Some obvious ones are partnering with not-for-profits that are already working in that behaviour change space in terms of mode shift. Again, if you're looking at restoration projects, again, it's about partnerships. So loads of ideas for you there in terms of, how you can be creative. And I think in terms of some of the pitfalls that people fall into, they often focus, I think, in silo and they lose sight of the creativity of what they can control. So that is your partnerships and your relationships. So look for those opportunities. So this is just a fake case study. I'm not going to read it all. You'll get it in your pack that we send. But it's just this idea that this small community sports club with 180 members has identified its biggest impact is travel, followed by electricity use of the clubhouse. Honestly, these are the key things. They rarely vary much from this. So you can rely on this. So straight away, what can you do? Can you get carpooling? Can you use reusable drink bottles? I just want to highlight something. People, probably not anybody on this call, because you probably all know, but people often don't understand the association with waste, physical waste, like single-use plastics. So if everyone is using reusable drink bottles and every event that you do is using non-single use, then you are reducing the petrochemicals that are used in those bottles. Petrochemicals are fossil fuels, and they obviously have an enormous carbon footprint in terms of their travel to you. So waste or physical objects that you purchase or that your membership purchases is really important. So if you can create behavior shift around that, that's amazing. You've probably been reading some of this, and there won't be anything in here that you haven't seen before. This is a creative idea here in terms of one key action. So get creative. What could you do? And then it's really important that somebody is happy to lead this. I will say, though, that it's also really important not to leave it with that one person. If you want to embed anything, don't leave it with one person. It's simply not fair. The burden sits with them, and it doesn't embed behavior change. Reporting to and from is also incredibly important. Again, I don't want to overwhelm you. You're just making a start at this stage by identifying your impact. The reporting follows that. So it's going to come later. So starting with a plan and developing it into a strategy, I've got here that there might be many of you that already have a climate strategy. So can you just answer, if I ask the question, do you have a climate strategy? Can you answer yes or no?
Actually, a few yeses.
Yeah.
One or two no's.
Okay. So again, probably I'm thinking that a lot of you, what we've talked about so far, you probably already know this. And, I've been part of very large organizations that have climate strategies, but nobody actually knows what's in them or very few people know what's in them. So I think I'm speaking a bit glibly, but what I want you to do is, if you already have a climate strategy, recognize the direction of travel. So a strategy and a plan are different. Today, we're really talking about just making a start on the plan. And if you've already got a strategy, it might be about coming back to these questions. It's about what, how, and when are we identifying, outlining the steps, detailing the execution, and making it short term. I want you to do this today. That's what today's about. It's not going to go against your strategy if you reduce your emissions. So if it doesn't link in with what's already in your strategy directly in terms of the jargon or the language, I wouldn't stress too much. The strategy that you have may need to be broken down into this plan. So the difference between a strategic statement at the bottom here is we support an equitable transition to a low emissions Aotearoa. That's the direction of travel. The plan is reducing travel emissions, creating positive impacts, collaborate. These will tell us exactly what we're doing. Okay. So I want you to start and follow Nike's advice. I don't really like to use mainstream brands, but I do think just do it. That verb is there. We've got to do something, not put it on a page. So let's think about what success looks like. So can you extract real value from your plan? This is what we're talking about with your strategy. You might have a document there that's 30 pages long. Can you extract value from it? Or is it more of a marketing document? Is it sitting on your website and it looks good and it does speak to truth, but we're not quite sure how we're actually reaching our 2030 emissions goals. We're not quite sure how we're reaching our 1.5 Paris-aligned targets. So having these questions from the get-go really helps. The questions to ask is, does the plan help you? Is it easy to follow? Is it culturally responsive? Again, we've got quite a few resources on this, both through Centre for Social Impact, heaps of resources, and also through links that we're sharing following. Is it short? I propose that you make a short one. And are there actual actions? So in terms of how we know we're making progress, these are just some common pitfalls that I want you to be aware of. And I've kind of talked through some of them already. So I don't think I need to kind of labor the point. It's kind of really clear to us that many of us have these strategies in our organizations, but we don't actually know who's across them. So how will we know that we're making progress? Well, it's going to be a measurable change from where you started. So you do have to measure it, and this comes back to that do. You will need to look at your odometers on your travel. You will need to look at your flight miles. You will need to look at your energy bills. This is what this is doing here. If you don't want to convert it to tons of carbon dioxide equivalents because it's too academic, you just do what I've suggested today. In terms of the environment, you can track your waste diverted, and you can also track your environmental improvements through partnerships. In terms of equity, really important because staff well-being, customer well-being, accessibility, fair pay are all part of this. Sorry, my clicker doesn't always go through very quickly. And has your plan aligned with all parts of your organisation? So we've spoken today a lot about what's in this space, and that's the often scope 1. We've talked about the upstream and the downstream, and you've probably got some ideas about what you can do. But is there anything else that you can be doing? Do you have a board? And are they involved in this direction of travel? What do your trustees think about your ability to work on reducing environmental harm and emissions with the level of capability and capacity that you've got? So how do you need to influence others? And firstly, who are they? Who are the others that you need to work with? Maybe they're your stakeholders or partners. Maybe they're your funders. So what's working for you with the people that fund you? What do you need to inform them of? What questions do you need to ask them? Many funders are trying really hard to reduce the number of hoops that you're jumping through. But equally, many funders are really aware of their own scope 3 emissions. What they do with their financed funds that they give to others is also an emission issue that they're aware of. So there is a partnership here where you can influence your funder. What do you need from them? Identify it. Okay, so I think this is a good opportunity to have us look at the Climate Action Tools Hub. And then what I'd like to do is get off this very long PowerPoint and just have a bit of a corridor. So I should be able to just check. Can you see this website?
Yes, we can, Esther. Thank you. And I've just put it in the chat if anyone else wants to get it open.
Okay, so this is, again, you'll find, I think the truth here with anything to do with reducing harm and creating impact is that it is work, and there aren't really any life hacks. We get told through social media that there's kind of hacks that we can go through, but I think it creates a bit of work, and a team of people need to be across it. Whether it's one person or two people, I think a really good place to start is to identify what we've done today. This website here, which is on the Centre for Social Impact page and also on the Funders Commitment page, looks at some different websites that I have chosen to kind of draw out because of the feedback that we've had from our not-for-profit groups that attend these sessions. So the first ones are looking at those operational tools that we've discussed today. So it's looking at things like organisational emissions and carbon footprinting. What I've tried to do is show you how long I think this will take you and who it's best for. So some of them might be best for team leads, but other ones might be best for example, youth groups that you work with. So it's going to be dependent on what you're looking for, and you probably will need to have a bit of a look through these. The next section is section is about Te Ao Māori and climate and how they intersect. And this is really important around tikanga and te tiriti. So these are really useful for leadership teams and for partnership planning. Really great resources in each of these. And again, it's really going to depend on your capability and your kaupapa. In terms of comms and engagement, so this might be related to things that we've spoken about today, like behaviour change or partnerships, or just general storytelling. We've got some here that are really cool for just being able to kind of reach some of these resources in a short space of time. So I've kind of done the background to try and reduce the burden on you to be constantly looking through millions of resources online. These are best for comm staff. Some of them are best for things like policy reviews or youth groups. Lots of stuff on climate justice, and there's international and Aotearoa focused ones. And then we've got finance and legal and investment, and advice for boards and trustees, and HR. And then at the end, we've also got governance and strategy. So yeah, there's a whole heap of information there and much to navigate. So I suspect that you will need to kind of have a look through that. And I would also say that this is clearly not an exhaustive list. So this is 25 websites. There are literally thousands. And these are based on the feedback for what people wanted from the Centre for Social Impact database. So yeah, it might not be exactly what you need. Am I sharing anything, Michelle?
No, we're just all seeing each other's faces at the minute.
Okay, wonderful. I like that. I can only see your face at the moment. So I think that I will probably I'm going to stop there, but I'll share my screen again afterwards. I'm just going to make you large so that I can see you. Wonderful. So, apologies, I'm getting distracted. Thank you all for listening. I know that was quite hard work. It was lots of me talking. What I'd like to do is just take the opportunity for us to all have a korero. So maybe if we raise hands, or Michelle, are you happy to facilitate? Some things in the chat that have come up are probably quite useful places to start. What's been helpful to people? And I'd like you to speak rather than put it in the chat. Let's have a korero.
Anyone feeling brave to come off mute and let us know if you've got a question or something that you want to talk about?
Simon.
For me, a lot about that breaking down the difference between strategy and a plan, because I think you're absolutely right. We often create a strategy, but it sits on a shelf. So be able to look at things and say, what can we actually do, and how does that have an impact? And even just something as simple as using our power bills rather than going through the emissions calculator system as a quick and easy boom, we can see it. So, mahi.
Oh, mahi. Thank you, Tenakwe. Awesome. Just a bit of feedback on the plan strategy. There's a whole session which is on Centre for Social Impact page, which is on strategic planning, and it talks specifically and in more detail about plans versus strategies, and could be really helpful for a lot of our organisations.
I'll put that link in the
below. Oh, thanks. Yeah.
Anyone
Is there
else?
any questions, or just korero? What are people stuck on right now, or what opportunities are you seeing? I might ask another question as well. Perhaps, what made you come today? Sandy. Kia ora.
Kia ora, team. I'm just reflecting on, so I'm Sandy from the Lead Centre for Not-for-Profit Governance and Leadership. I'm just reflecting on the impacts conversation you had about how most of our organisations have positive impact in the social justice space. And also reflecting on years ago, I did a master's thesis on organisation sustainability. When I asked about environmental dimensions, people were like, oh, that's up to the environment groups. But actually now us all realising that it's up to all of us to, And so I think, our organisation's moving into the climate ready leadership space, but just really getting us really comfortable thinking about looking at our organisations and leadership through an environmental lens, I think is really important. So yeah, thank you for the session, Esther.
Thank you very much. It's great feedback. And Sandy at Lead has got some awesome professional development and workshops available. So yeah, a little plug for you there, Sandy, as well.
Awesome. I think Emma, you're up next.
Kia ora, Emma Brown from Duke of Ed. Firstly, thank you, Esther, for the session. I think it's been really, really informative. And for me, one of the key things has actually just been the fact that we don't have to create perfect in terms of a strategy. I think it takes a lot of weight off your shoulders, sort of, because they do look, it can feel quite overwhelming. I think one of the things that I've really reflected on in the session today has been around the partnerships side of things. So for us, we've sort of got a small national office, but like you mentioned, we've then got a base of 17,000 young people that are all doing different things around the country. And we work in a shared space. So obviously there's the partnership from a national operations perspective, but then I think for me, we're also part of an international organisation that have research bodies and things connected to them. And I'm wondering whether maybe there might be potential for us to have a think about the impact in terms of the wider piece of work, both the good and the bad, possibly at an international level that we could then potentially translate to a national level as well. So really appreciate it. It's definitely created a whole pile of food for thought for us.
Awesome. I love that you're thinking big straight away. You're like, I'm just going to do some small things internationally.
No, I'm going to ask some international people to do some things internationally, and then hopefully we can use it.
Yeah, wonderful. And I think that's the opportunity, right, is what can you do in partnership? Because everybody is playing in this space and lots of people are already doing a lot. The feedback I'd give as well is that showing others what you're doing is really helpful, because otherwise we just have to be careful about that burden of asking others to change.
Yeah, absolutely. That's awesome. Ka pai, thank you.
Kia ora. Thanks, Emma. Nikki, I think you might be our last question. Over to you.
Oh, kia ora. I'm from Te Hononga Iwi. We're a climate action project in Tamaki Makaurau, and the partnership conversation really resonated with me too, because we started as a small sports organisation to increase our sustainability. And so similar to the case study that you expressed, Esther, but nowadays, with a short 3.5 years later, we've got 108 small organisations that are willing to join with us across 7 sectors to increase environmental health and in response to iwi request. So it is possible to use a strengths-based model to increase social equity and environmental justice and local organisational resilience. But having the opportunity to, when none of us come from your skills-based, Esther, to learn from the toolkits that are available and to learn from each other across disciplines has been absolutely crucial to us as we partner with iwi to create change in an entirely voluntary way, just using the strengths of local people and places. So I want to thank the Centre for the collateral that we're able to use to help increase our strengths, but it is possible, and that multipolar partnership across generations and cultures, skills bases and professions is really useful.
Thank you. Ngā mihi nui. That's really great to
Nami.
hear. And if you're willing to, you could pop your organisation in the chat if people can gain anything from understanding what it is that you're doing, Nikki, as well. But yeah, strengths-based model, working in partnership is absolutely where we need to be going. And we're seeing so much of it, which is exciting, right? Any more questions at all, Michelle?
Not at the moment, just some lovely feedback that I'll read to you afterwards from people. So thanks, everyone. I just wanted to take a minute, if that's okay. We last year tried something a little bit new alongside these workshops to see if we could help people kind of get that action going, like what Esther talked about. So alongside this webinar, we want to offer 5 places for people to have a half-an-hour coaching session with Esther. The plan is it would be in a few months' time, so you've got time to kind of get your strategy and your plan and start doing some actions and reflecting on what you're doing, and then you can kind of have a conversation with her and yeah, bring your unique questions. So after this, in the email, we'll include how to book that, or if you're interested. At this point, unfortunately, it is just for Foundation North grantees, but if you're keen and you're not one, will you email me anyway, and then we'll figure out if there's another way to make it happen. Yeah, so keen to help you as much as we can. So that's all from me, but over to you, Esther.
Tēnā koe, Michelle. So the sessions will be available in October, just purely because I have no capacity before then. I feel the feedback we got from the last coaching sessions were really good. It is about small scale, so major disclaimer, there's an awful lot that's not in this workshop, as you know. But it's really about getting started. So the coaching session means that we can just make it that bit more bespoke to your needs. So it's often about just sharing your strategy or your vision or goal and then working on that. So I think if anybody wants to contact us, Michelle will enable that process. And I will take the opportunity to thank you all for your time today, and I will close us with a karakia. Kua mutu a mātou mahi, mo tēnei wā, mana kitia, ma mātou katoa, o mātou hua, o mātou whanau, ai o kia te orangi. Ti hei mōri ora. Thank you all. Thanks for your time. Ka kite. See you again.